Welcome, 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 everyone. Thank you for joining today. We're excited to have you here as this is our final episode of Diversity in the PR Classroom for 2023. My name is Anitra Henry. I'm the Senior Director of Strategic Initiatives at the Institute for Public Relations. This year, IPR and PRSA Educators Academy rebranded the virtual discussion series Race in the PR Classroom to Diversity in the PR Classroom. This rebrand enabled us to expand our conversations beyond race to address the challenges and opportunities in diversity, equity, and inclusion as they evolve for students, practitioners, and educators. Before we begin, I'd also like to recognize our sponsor, the Stan Richards School of Advertising and Public Relations at the University of Texas at Austin. Thank you so much for supporting Diversity in the PR Classroom. IPR and PRSA Educators Academy have been partnering on this series since June of 2020. Today, we will have a discussion on the diverse perspectives and experiences and the future of artificial intelligence, which will be moderated by my partner, Irene Maslowski, representing PRSA Educators Academy. Before we begin, I'd like to share a few housekeeping rules. This is a Q&A type forum. To ask a question, all you have to do is either drop it in the chat or raise your virtual hand. Once you're called on, please remember to state your name and your organization. If you would like to ask a question anonymously, please type the message to the hosts and the panelists in the chat, and we will read your question aloud. Only the moderators can see your questions, so you will remain anonymous. Today's session will be recorded and will be available for playback within the next 48 hours. And lastly, please remain respectful to our hosts and others on the call by keeping yourself muted at all times unless you intend to speak or ask a question. At this time, Irene, Hope, Willie, I'm going to turn this over to you for our panelists to introduce themselves and sit back and enjoy this great conversation. Thank you.
Okay, so Hope, why don't you start by introducing yourself, and then Willie, and then we'll jump right into the questions.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Hope Chidwisano. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, in the School of Information. I have a background in human-computer interaction and computer science. I specifically conduct research in resource-constrained areas or marginalized areas to understand how people are using emerging digital technologies and how these technologies are impacting their lives. Before joining the University of Tennessee, I was a postdoctoral fellow at Carnegie Mellon University, and I completed my PhD at Michigan State University.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Willie.
Yes, nice to meet everyone. My name is Willie Strover. I am from the law firm Cole Schatz. We are mainly an East Coast firm. We are in New Jersey, New York, Florida, but also in Texas and Baltimore, DC, kind of all over the place. I am the co-chair of our firm's intellectual property department, which means I do a lot of work in trademarks and copyrights and patents and trade secrets and kind of everything people create. And obviously AI has been a big hot new issue for the better part of a year or two, and we're seeing a lot of lawsuits and interesting questions being raised. So I'm looking forward to having this chat today.
Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to ask both of you this question, and Willie, I'll start with you. From your perspective, what basic understanding should people have regarding AI, about it, what it can do and what it can't do? For so many of us, as business people, as PR professionals, and as academics, there's a fit for everywhere, or maybe nowhere, I don't know. But I think that there is a lot of confusion, and because there's so much information coming out at us, it's hard to sometimes grasp it and get your arms around it and develop some knowledge. So we'll start with you on what your perspective is.
Yeah, we were actually laughing about this question beforehand because the question of what is AI really is, it's not a thing, right? It's so many different things. It can do so many different things. It can be in so many different places. we interact with a lot of, well, let me take a step back. At its most basic, it's a tool, right? It's a tool for eating a lot of data and analyzing it and putting out a result. And so it's in a lot of different places right now. I don't think we know what it can't do yet. I don't think we know what it can do yet, the outer limits of it. So I think we're learning, and that's going to be, I think, one of the big issues we're going to talk about today is kind of what we need to be aware of as it grows and fills in all these extra spaces.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hope, what do you say?
Yeah, I think AI is one of the topics that is really like burning at this time in most fields. And one of the things that people should know is that AI has been there like since the 1950s, only that people have not realized it. And in the 1970s, there were already generative models for AI. It's only now that it's becoming ubiquitous and people are using it for different ways. And in terms of how it is developed, mostly it is developed using different types of data that is collected from humans and other living things, as well as anything that people are using. So most of the things that AI models do is based on learned behavior from humans. So in short, it is important more or less like to participate in the design of these kinds of technologies in order to produce models that are more equitable. And in terms of what AI can do at this point, mostly is that it can learn different things from humans. And in addition to that, it can also perpetuate bias in different ways. In technology, there's a theory which is known as amplification theory, which suggests that technology is only a tool that is only used mostly like to exacerbate people's existing intent. So that also applies to AI. Mostly it's there like to be used by humans. And it can make decisions based on the data that it was trained on. In terms of what it cannot do, there are different things. For example, at this point, AI is not conscious. It is not empathetic. It is not sympathetic. And it cannot do some of the things that people can do, like watching soccer games, for example.
Yeah. So it can never be us. We do know, at least, we know that at least. Now, Hope, you've done some work internationally with AI, and I wonder, what do you see globally? I mean, we are in a global society, of course, so we are, dealing with organizations and, companies all over the world as far as business goes. But what is the differences, or if you've seen any, and how it's being used internationally in other countries, Europe, Asia, and other, wherever your work has taken you?
Yeah, so I see a lot of differences because most of my work has been conducted in sub-Saharan Africa, where people from this part of the world have not participated in the design process of most of the technological systems. And with that, I've seen that there are a lot of unintended consequences that come with the deployment of technologies that have used AI. More specifically, I've studied smart home technologies such as domestic robots and smart security systems. I deployed some of these in Kenya and Malawi just to understand how people are going to use them. But it was very different how people were using these technologies. For example, men, in this context, men are more or less like powerful than women because they are patriarchal societies. And men were using these technologies to monitor their spouses, to see what kind of things they do when they are not at home, or whether they are seeing other men. And some of them were using these technologies to monitor their daughters. For example, there were men in Kenya who were using these technologies to monitor whether their daughters sneak out at night to go for dances without their knowledge. So what I've seen mostly from this context is that technologies like this are mostly used for predatory surveillance without the knowledge of those who are being watched. And this is just unintended because designers of these technologies in the Western societies did not design these technologies to do this.
So is it being used for business there?
Yes, there are some people who are using it for business too. For example, I deployed a probe, which was just a technology that was detecting motion and sending an alert to the user's mobile phone. I asked people like to use this technology for anything that they wanted to use it for. So there are some business owners who said that they had employees, but they don't know what time their employees arrive at work. So they placed these probes in their shops in order like to know whenever they receive an alert in the morning, they know that someone has entered their shop, and that made them realize that it is their employee, and they could be able to know what time they arrived at work. But other than that, I haven't seen many instances where it is used for business purposes.
Business. Okay, great. Well, thank you. Now, Willie, last week we saw the SAG strike come to an end, which a component of that lawsuit was about AI and how it would be used. How are current lawsuits, do you think, are shaping future regulation, or shaping regulation now, or will shape it in the future?
Yeah, so the SAG after strike, in case anybody wasn't familiar with the AI part, some of the actors had complained, or one of the complaints was that, or the worries, was that studios were going to make digital replicas of actors, right? So using their voices, their likenesses, and basically cut the actors out. We've already seen some of this in some movies where, technology makes people look younger or creates parts for people in movies that have already passed away. So the proposed solution was requiring consent from the actor and paying the performer for the number of days that would have been required if the real person was involved. So that's one small example. The big example is that AI is still being, growing. It's a growing field. People are learning the new applications. And we're still finding uses for it. But on the other hand, lawsuits and regulations move incredibly slowly. The White House just issued a 100-page executive order trying to set some boundaries on AI implementation, but that's where you kind of see the lawsuits grabbing everyone's attention, right? And I think it's a combination of lawsuits probably and a little fear, right? People are worried what's going to happen, the risks, all of that. So I think right now we haven't had any major decisions yet. There was some litigation with the Copyright Office about creatorship, who actually owns what is created by AI, whether it's creative enough to be an actual work. So we've seen some early decisions, but nothing huge. Right now, it's kind of everyone's raising the alarms. So yeah, the big issues on the legal side are consent. AI uses a lot of data, eats a lot of data. Ownership, who owns what AI creates, who owns, right, what happens when AI uses someone else's work to make something new, and creativity, what is actually AI, what is it actually making? So I think there are a lot of lawsuits going on a lot of different things, and I think we're kind of in the beginning stage of how courts are treating it and what's going to happen kind of with regulation.
Yeah, and you and I have had this discussion before about AI and intellectual property and how it affects, our creativity, whether it be graphic design, public relations, writing, anything that we do and we create. And I think one of the more alarming, things I learned from that conversation were that you can track someone down who does copy your work, but by the time you reach them and you try to make them stop, 4 other people or 4 other firms have already duplicated your work, and it becomes like a whack-a-mole. You've got to keep at it, and it is it is concerning, and it's disturbing. Of course, we don't have the answers, for that right now. Now, what about the ethical challenges in AI, Hope, especially as we're looking in the classroom? With students, and how can we address these issues? And maybe you can talk about some of the issues that you have dealt with, and maybe you've had some solutions or have some direction that you can share with all of us, because I think, especially those that are academics, this, may be a concern for us.
Yeah, so definitely AI is influencing our education system in different ways. And I think there are levels of bias that it brings, The first is that there's bias between those who have access to AI and those who do not have access to AI. Think about ChatGPT, for example. If you're teaching students, not just in the United States, but I'm thinking globally, because not everyone, like in developing countries, have access to a computer or the internet. So if you have diverse students in your class who have different infrastructure capabilities, then those who have access to AI would easily get information, while those who do not have access to such kind of systems like ChatGPT, they wouldn't be able to query anything on such systems, or they don't even have understanding of those systems. So there is bias already at that level between those who have access and those who do not have access. And another level is even those who have access, there's also bias. For example, think about the context of the United States. There are a lot of immigrants here in the United States, and some of them do not have English as their first language. So most of the time, there are voice assistants that you can ask questions, for example. So you realize that these voice assistants can easily understand someone who speaks English as a native speaker compared to someone who speaks English as a second language. So there are a lot of frustrations from those who speak English as a second language, and that makes it difficult for them to get information from such systems, even though they have access to those systems. So I feel like one of the ways of trying to clear out this bias is making sure that the training of these kinds of models should include data from all people across the globe, not just like one set. I feel like most voice assistants, for example, were trained with data just from native speakers of English, because even me, I'm not a student at this time, but when I ask a voice assistant a question, it's difficult for it to understand what I'm saying. So I can even imagine the kind of difficulty that a student who is trying to complete an assignment might have from this.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. Willie, but so from your perspective, what do you see in terms of, ethics in business and so forth?
Yeah, I didn't know those two things went together, ethics and business. But just to build on what Hope was saying, in terms of bias, my math teacher when I was growing up, she was talking about calculators, but she used to say garbage in, garbage out, right? So if you're putting in the wrong stuff, you're going to get out the wrong stuff, and that's where bias shows up. People are writing these platforms and these codes and algorithms and all that, and they're going to have bias when they create them, and the data they choose, the pools of data they choose are going to be biased. And when you look at how where AI is being used, right? Housing, employment, healthcare. I mean, there's obviously some alarm bells start going off about how bias might impact that stuff. There was a practice in housing real estate market called redlining that I guess people have been dealing with, and now it's kind of everyone's worried that AI will bring it back. So that's one risk in bias. AI, just by virtue of its ability to chew up so much data, could risk amplifying all these things, right? So where you had your bias in one small area, now it gets spread kind of far and wide with this. So that's one big issue for sure, ethically. Privacy is another big one that we see a lot of. Just the potential for AI to do great things in medicine, and get huge population groups and their medical history and how things are impacting them and when people are getting sick with how viruses are spreading, right, could be super helpful. But are we taking the right steps to protect everyone's privacy and their rights to disclose what they want to disclose or don't want to disclose, or all that? So those are huge issues too. And then just to bring it to the classroom, right, plagiarism is a huge issue.
Yeah.
Once someone's paper, someone's thesis goes into the pool, it's going to show up in everything. AI is going to draw on that to create new works, new responses, new answers to papers and things like that. And probably is not going to look identical, because that's not how AI works. But it's still being used there, and you have people creating, alleging they create things that maybe they didn't. So there's a lot of that. There are, in terms of how to address it, there actually are companies that do this, that either they have AI platforms themselves that tout their ethical kind of awareness and their bias spotting and things like that. And there are consultants who will come review your AI code and your AI implementation and all that to look at fairness metrics and demographics and things like that. So it's definitely something that's on a lot of people's radar. Yeah, like Hope said, AI is not empathetic or sympathetic, right? We need people to look at that and say, oh, this is messing up here.
Yeah. So let me start on with Willie on this one, and then Hope, I want to hear from you as well. Just like social media, we look at the different traditional audiences that we have, right? From baby boomers, or even what I call the traditionalists that are older than the boomers, and they certainly are still here. And of course, millennials, Gen X, Gen Z, and Alpha will be coming along. Have you seen any indication of which generation may be using AI more than others? And maybe you can reflect on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously the willingness to adopt is a huge generational issue. I think you have younger people who have grown up with technology in every part of their lives, and they're very used to it. There's the joke, and I can't remember who said it, but the joke about, in the 1960s, right, someone wouldn't use a piece of technology because it might be spying on them. And now we ask our household spy machines to make our shopping lists and find recipes for muffins and all that stuff, right? So we're much more comfortable having that technology with us at all times. So I think that's going to make adoption a lot easier. People aren't going to be as scared of AI. I mean, everyone's seen Terminator, but I think at this point we kind of don't, that's not really what AI looks like to the younger generation. But I think social responsibility is the other side of that coin. I think, obviously speaking very, very broadly, but social justice is an important issue for a lot of people in the younger generations. And I think you're going to have maybe, the bigger corporations that want to push the gas pedal on AI to make money, and you're going to have younger generations who want to be more cautious about that. So.
And Hope, how do you respond to that as far as the generations are concerned from your perspective and experience?
Yeah, definitely there's a generational gap. And for example, I think it is Forbes, which reported that 70% of Gen Z are using AI, compared to only 28% of the baby boomers who are using these technologies. So this definitely shows a wide gap between these two generations. And mostly I feel like these are attributed also like to how we grow up. For example, like the baby boomers at that time, as I said earlier, AI has been there since the 1950s. But at that time, how many people had technologies? There were just few, and it was not as ubiquitous as it is today. So with time, this technology is everywhere. It's in our homes. We are holding it in our hands. We are working with it everywhere we are going. So I feel like generations like Gen Z, they're growing up with it and they're getting used to it. They're thinking it's the way of life. While the baby boomers think that this is not how we grow up and things are changing. So I think there's a lot of fear among older generations compared to the younger ones, because they are able to see the change that is happening, and the big fear is that it's going to change humanity, and maybe it will happen like in a bad way. So that's I think a valid fear, and the younger ones don't think it's going to do that because they don't have experience about how it was like without these kinds of technologies before.
Yeah, and I think that same thing happened with social media. Would you not say that older generations were much more fearful of it, and yet we find now that many older people, even those that are just a bit older than the boomers, use it all the time. Not everybody, but again, it's that fear factor. I think this though may be more people are more afraid that they're really being spied on. It's almost like a, a Big Brother 1984 kind of perhaps, mentality. So it'll be interesting, to see. So Hope, when we talk about, promoting social equity, and Willie just mentioned that, how do we do that with AI? Can it be harnessed to promote social equity? That's a very broad question and big, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think that can be done only if we are able to understand the differences across different populations in the world. I feel like there are a lot of complex differences, ranging from cultural differences, social differences, or even technological differences, the infrastructure that is available in different parts of the world. So I feel like there are a lot of pre-existing conditions that need to be addressed in order to make sure that the systems that are designed based on AI are equitable, like for all populations. In addition to that, I've mentioned issues related to data sets. Most of the data sets are biased. For example, technologists cite that it's difficult to collect equitable data, which is true. But I feel like with time, we should be able to find better ways of making sure that we are able to have equitable data that can be used to train machine learning models that can be used out there. Another way of doing this, I feel like before deploying our models like ChatGPT, for example, we should be able to test their generalizability, whether they can work in some parts of the world and how they are changing society before large-scale deployment. That would also open doors to collect more data that can be used to train these models and make them more equitable. And more importantly, I feel like most of the researchers are focusing on data sets, thereby forgetting the user-centered design process. So it's not just about collecting this data, but also participating in the design process. For example, if people are developing a system for the public relations, I feel like experts from the public relations should participate in the design of the actual system, not just providing the data that can be used to train the models.
Okay, so Willie, you initially mentioned, social equality a few minutes ago, and what is your feeling about that in tandem in response to what Hope is saying?
Yeah, I think Hope is dead on about the risks. Just to start with the negative, there are big risks, right? It's if bias is going in, if the algorithms aren't designed right and things like that, it has the potential to really do bad things. But I think there is also the potential to really help social equity. I mean, think about one of the examples that you hear is with banks, right? A bank, when you go take your small business to the bank to get a loan, the decision used to be about how strong your handshake was, or what color your skin was, and now it's easier for banks to use AI and digest all this information about your business and get a kind of unbiased look at how your business performs and what your risk is and all that stuff. So it has the potential to kind of take some of the, it sounds like a bad thing, but take some of the the humanity out of it, and get that unbiased look. Or just looking at data about how policies are having unintended effects on subsets of the population, right? We can take all these pieces of data and analyze them and look at what comes out the other end. How are people being treated? How's this subset being treated? How's that subset being treated? So it definitely has the potential to promote social equity and I guess prove where there are imbalances that need to be addressed and things like that. So it's there. The potential's there. Just we have to be very careful, like Hope said.
Yeah. So do you think, though, when you give the example of the small bank, I mean, is there the possibility that this could work in reverse, that it could actually cause more bias? Like somebody comes in for a loan and by using AI, it doesn't work to their advantage, it works to their disadvantage. So how could something like that happen?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. That goes to what we've been saying about the data that you look at, right? If you're just looking at data from one area compared to another, you might say, well, the loans over here don't do as well, but you have to look at why that is, right? Is it because of government policies or the jobs that are available or whatever that is? So there's definitely not an easy, I know this is a lawyery response, but it's definitely not an easy answer. Just it's going to be the potential is there to look at it and to look at it unbiased, but it's going to take humans realizing that we have to kind of go into it unbiased.
Yeah. Hope, do you have anything else to add to that?
So I think in addition to that, I think we can also think about in order to promote social equity, I feel like thinking about other approaches to AI design, like rather than just thinking about the traditional approaches, like what people are doing currently, there are also non-traditional approaches. For example, researchers are encouraging using pluralistic approaches, which are based on understanding that people have different values and different needs. So I feel like putting that in mind can also help with promoting social equity. And, yeah.
Okay, so to kind of segue off of that point, what about how we create a more diverse AI community, Hope? How would you suggest we would do that? Bring diversity into the AI community.
Yeah, so building on what I just said, like things like pluralistic approaches, which do not focus on universalism. For example, I'll give you an example of something which is not AI. Laptops, for example. Laptops were developed in the Western societies. And these laptops are shipped across the globe, like to the developing world. There was a project which was known as One Laptop Per Child project. I don't know if you have heard about this, but over $1 billion was given to MIT to design laptops that can be used to improve the education standards of children in the global South. So MIT designed those laptops without involving users from the global South. So as a result, it was found that these laptops were not used to improve education standards. People were using these laptops in their homes just for entertainment purposes, just because their parents did not have any entertainment devices. So they prioritized using these technologies for other things rather than education. So I feel like in order to bring like a diversity, it's important to understand that people have different needs, and we should focus on needs from different people across the globe and put them together. I think it will be difficult to develop one system that is universal across the world, rather than thinking about plurality, like how are different aspects like across the globe are doing things and designed for those specific needs. And in addition to that, I also think about engagement programs, because some of these technologies are not accepted in other parts of the world because people don't understand them. So maybe if we bring more awareness to how technologies are important, or why AI would help people like in their activities, I feel they would be more accepting and contribute to their design process.
Yeah, so I think that's a good point, through education and also, as you say, if people get frustrated if they don't understand how something works. And when that happens, and I think all of us, we tend to not use it. We tend to not do it, right? We push it aside. So if people are not educated to understanding how this can help them or make their lives better, they may be more, they may be reticent to even bother with it, at all. What do you think, Willie? I mean, what do you think are some of the ways that we can, from your perspective, create a, much more diversity in through AI within the community?
Yeah, I would say the same two things. I think it's having the voices and having the learning. You want to have as many voices in the conversation as possible, so you get the different opinions, and things aren't, when a model's created, it's not just one company or one person trying to do one thing. You're getting input from a lot of different people about how it should be, implemented or all that. This is very AI kind of has captured everyone's imagination right now, which is good because this needs to be in in front of the scenes thing, not a behind the scenes thing. Right? People need to know what's going on and what data is going into it and who's making the decisions. So definitely good to have as many voices in the conversation as possible. And I think learning about what AI really is and how it impacts people. I think just to use the PR space as an example, right? I think there's a worry from some people maybe that AI is going to replace us and take our jobs, and people are going to use AI to write press releases and things like that. But then you learn about AI and you realize what the limitations are and the creativity that's just not there and the connection and all of that. So when you hit that point, then you think, okay, well, how can I use it? Right? You learn enough about AI and you figure out what it is and what it's not going to do, and then you figure out how it's going to help you, and then it's to everyone's benefit, hopefully. So
yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think when every industry will have its own need or use for AI, or one industry may use it in a certain way, another may not, just like the legal, education, public relations. And I think that organizations like our public relations organizations and your legal I forget what the name of your trade association is for the legal side, but it's full of educational programs. And I think that will probably, much as what we're trying to do today with this forum, is be able to bring as much information to our members and those of us who work in within an industry to try to be helpful to understand. There's a lot of information going on out there. I seem to be getting emails quite frequently on signing up and getting AI certification. Well, I'm not sure exactly what that means, because you don't know what I do for a living, but you're just assuming that you throw out this, kind of blanket marketing message, and I guess maybe some people do go ahead and take the course and think they're being certified, but what does it mean? So there was a lot of that too. Would you not say, especially on looking at it from a legal perspective, that there are a lot of people, organizations that will jump on the bandwagon to try to get individuals or businesses to learn through them?
Yeah, for sure. It's in the legal world. There's a hot topic every year, and it's been blockchain, and it's been cannabis, and it's been it kind of goes one by one. And every time it comes along, everyone says it's going to revolutionize everything, and there's going to be world's going to flip on its head. AI could do that. so AI really that could be the one that sticks around, and like Hope said, it's been around for a long time already. And now it's the hot topic kind of the day, but it has the potential to do lots of amazing things. So
yeah. So as a sidebar question, going back to you, Hope, since it's been around since the 1950s, what took it so long to get to where it is today?
Yeah, so I think one of the reasons why it took so long is more or less like in terms of the resources. You may realize that over time, technology has improved in terms of its processing power, as well as the size of technologies have also improved over time. So machine learning models require a lot of processing power. So just because of that, previously maybe people couldn't train most of the models because the computer was not able to process power at the speed that it is doing today. So I think that is one of the reasons. So as the technology is improving, there are a lot of ways that the computer itself can work on data faster, because there are these models, like large language models, for example, they rely on a lot of data that takes a lot of time to train. So as this computing power is increasing, it is making things easier to train models. In addition to that, as I said earlier, technology at that time was not as ubiquitous as it is today. So most people did not have mobile phones were not there, for example, like for most people.
Of course.
Yeah. So just because there are a lot of affording technologies today, like mobile phones, it's easier like for people to get applications that are using these technologies today than before.
Just a lot of years in between, you know, it's just interesting. Now, Hope, what about the fears, you know, in terms of the future of AI? I think that's one of the, you know, obviously the big questions. And maybe from your perspective, just, you know, what is the, you know, main good that AI is doing or done? And then what's the other side of that?
Yeah, so I think there are a lot of good things that AI is doing in terms of efficiency. And it has also reduced the amount of time to do things, as well as also maybe help people save money. I'll give you an example of Grammarly, for example, which is an AI-based software that help people to do copy editing and proofreading of their documents. If you give something to a human, for example, to proofread it and copy edit for you, it takes more time than the time that would be taken on Grammarly. And in addition to that, maybe they might charge more because they have spent more time working on it compared like to subscribing to Grammarly, which is only like maybe paying some money like every month, but it's just a little fee. So I feel like AI has improved things in that area. In addition to that, I also think AI has helped to support inadequate human services. I'll give you an example of the research that I'm currently doing. I'm working with poultry farmers in Malawi, as well as agricultural extension officers, to understand how we can use artificial intelligence to detect diseases in chickens. So this is important because there are a few agricultural extension officers in the developing world. So these agricultural extension officers have to visit areas that are far away from the city. And there are a lot of areas that they have to visit. So at some point, they don't know which areas they should prioritize on. So we are thinking that if we have systems that can predict diseases in chickens geographically, maybe it could help these extension officers to prioritize areas that they should visit over other areas. So in this case, if we have such kind of systems, we are not replacing the agriculture extension officers, but rather helping them to make decisions which areas they should visit first.
And Willie, how would you respond to that? What have you seen from your perspective? What's the good that it's done? What's maybe the not so good that it's done?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of good, we talked about a lot of big, you know, big concepts, big ideas, but I think it provides some amazing tools for the little guy also, right? I think I mean, you and I may have talked about this, about, you know, something that everyone did, or a lot of people did, and during the pandemic, was start these small businesses out of their houses, right? And you can sell crafts or whatever you're doing, and set up your website and go on Etsy or whatever it is. And in AI, there are image generative AI tools that will make amazing pictures for you, right? Professionally done. You're selling hamburgers, it can get the zoom right on the thing and put the little droplets of whatever on it, and the shading and the focus, and just, you can get these professionally looking pictures in seconds, and you can get hundreds of them. So it's pretty, you know, you can be a little guy and have a professional look in seconds with AI, right? You don't have to hire a photographer and do a photo shoot and do all this stuff. So it kind of gives, you know, the little guy, the little company, the individual, these amazing tools to compete on a different level. So things like that are going to be, right, are going to show up in our everyday lives. There was an ad for, I can't remember the phone company, but there was an ad a couple weeks ago that I saw about pictures, stitching together pictures on your phone as you take them, right? You take 3 pictures, it's going to pick the best one of everybody, where everyone's looking at the camera and everyone's head is pointed the right way. And it's going to stitch them all together and make everything, you know, amazing, right? And no one's going to think twice about that. They're just going to take their pictures and it's going to do it in the background. So little quality of life things like that are going to be, you know, are here, right? They're already here. So that's going to be nice.
What about the detriment that you see, if any?
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, the thing that scares them most is the data. Is the data and is the privacy and is, who's doing what with the data and how is data being collected. There are a lot of people who don't think about data all the time, right? We have the luxury of thinking about that because we have other needs taken care of. Well, what if you don't have housing, or what if you don't have a steady, source of food, and you're not thinking about who's taking my information, who knows everything about me, my social security numbers, every time I visit the hospital. So that's something that, when AI grabs that, it's going to go right into the pool. So that's why regulation is super, super important. To me, anyway, on privacy is a huge issue.
Huge issue. Hope, what about, do you have anything as far as the detriment other than what Willie has just outlined that you see from your work and your perspective?
Yeah, I think I like what Willie said about regulation. I feel like that is very important because there are a lot of privacy issues that comes with these kinds of systems because they are collecting a lot of data from users. And I think in the global South, what I've seen, people are not really worried about, if they do, then they don't say it, but mostly they are not that concerned about the data that is collected about them than their privacy between themselves and other people that they live with. For example, if you have like people living as a family and you have a smart home security camera, people are not really concerned about like someone else somewhere else watching over them or collecting their data, but they are more concerned about their family members seeing other things that they are doing. So I feel like they are also privacy issues like between family members and between people who are living together. And I feel like if those things are also regulated, it will be important.
Okay, so now Hope, question for you. How do you feel we can mitigate the bias when in algorithms and systems to optimize learning outcomes?
Yeah, I feel like one of the ways to mitigate the bias is to empower the teachers too, because some teachers may not have a background in computer science or other kinds of field that help with the development of these systems. So I feel like providing to them some understanding of how generative models work, for example, I feel like that would help like to understand how AI works, and they would be able maybe to develop some assignments in a way that they could easily catch cheating, for example. I would give you an example of a paper that I was writing with some colleagues. I was collaborating with some colleagues, and we gave each other sections that we should work on. And it was interesting because someone just went to ChatGPT and asked the question, and then they copied everything and then pasted it as what they have done for their part. So when I was reading that part, I was asking myself questions like, I don't think this person can write this. How did he write this? So I went back to ChatGPT and then typed the same question, and then ChatGPT brought the same things that he just wrote. And some of the references that he brought were not even existing. So, because I was able to question the nature of the things that he brought, that was easy for me to catch it and then, help to make sure that we are not just copying things and, including it in the sections or the paper that we are writing. That was easy for me because I have some understanding of how things work, and I know the people that I'm working with. So I know their capabilities too. I know that this person cannot do this. I feel like, this is just too good for this person. So if you have students, for example, I feel like you have been with them for some time, you know their capabilities, and if you understand AI, it will help you to detect some harm and try to avoid it or prevent it from being published somewhere else, or reduce bias in the classroom. If you see that, you can ask the student, for example, to write an assignment again, of if there are some rules that you have said, then that will give you a platform for you like to make sure that they do the right thing.
Just good points. And so I was going to say, to Willie, when he's saying about, you're publishing a paper and somebody taking it, this is exactly what we were talking about before, right? That, anybody can pick up your work then, and very difficult to track them down. Now, Willie, do you feel that there's an element of bias regarding the intellectual property rights of AI? Do you feel that that's already happening?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of the things we've talked about already, but I think one that we haven't really dug into on the call yet is kind of ownership of the output. So in the patent world and in the copyright world, the question of whether AI can create things and own things and be an inventor or an author is a huge issue, right? That's the big hot issue right now. And it seems kind of it's a short step to go from there about whether AI can be an inventor to the bias of large companies versus small companies. So if AI can be an inventor, it could dump out thousands of inventions, in a day, right? It could just keep quote unquote inventing things and filing. Then people could file thousands of patents on it, and you'd have these big companies that would own everything. Or authorship on the copyright side, right? You just have it make, thousands and thousands of articles or pictures or whatever. So which the little guy can't do, right? The smaller company's not going to be able to do that. You could have, I don't want to pick on the pharmaceutical industry, but you could have a pharmaceutical company that could just clean up the landscape in the patent world for everything that could potentially be, protected or created, and block everyone out. So the entire purpose of intellectual property is to encourage innovation and development. And you could, if I'm not saying this necessarily would happen, but you could imagine a scenario where it would stop innovation because, well, I can't compete against the computer, right? The computer is going to be able to do this a million times faster than me.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah. So, again, it goes back to regulation. It goes back to the fights that we're currently having about who can create what, who can own what, what's protectable. So yeah, that is a potential bias, class bias, I guess, right? That would be that's the version of that. But
so, and let me just go on here now, Willie. So from your perspective, though, what do you, if you could, describe the ideal future of AI coexisting with humans? Because that's really what we want, right?
Yeah.
So how would that look, and what do we need to focus on as we move forward?
Yeah, to me, I think it's definitely has a place in the world as a tool. I think it's will always be a tool that humans are using to make our lives hopefully better. But really, my ideal world would be one where people stay in the conversation, where it becomes an important thing that people are talking about and care about and involved in, because it is potentially very powerful. So that would be my ideal world, be one where people really care about it and learn about it and get involved. And yeah, I think that would be my ideal.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating and it's scary at the same time, I guess. So
yeah.
Hope, how would you respond to that? What, from your perspective, what's your ideal future of AI coexisting with humans, and what do we need to focus on as we move forward, all of us, not just from one industry to another?
Yeah, I think at this point, people are worrying a lot about biases, ethical biases that come with AI. And I think this will continue in the future. And the reason why this is happening, I think, is because there are pre-existing ethical biases. Even before technology was there, we had human rights, for example. And even though there are human rights, there are still abuses out there in the world. For example, women in patriarchal societies are abused by their husbands despite having human rights. So I feel like we need to fix those pre-existing ethical biases in order like to improve the models that we have, because AI is going to learn from that, and it's just going to, emulate what we are doing. So it will just increase the gap that is existing if we don't take care of those things. And as I said earlier, there's this theory, which is amplification theory, which suggests that, people use technology just to exacerbate their existing intent. So if they want to do harm, they'll just use the technology to do harm with it. So I feel like changing the mindset and understanding like the basic principles of humanity is also important, because otherwise the technology will simply be used as a tool, as Willie has already said. And I think at this point, we should also realize that in this world, it's not just humans, but we are living with other living things. There are other animals, there are even plants. So I feel like AI is also going to impact other living things. And instead of just thinking about human-centered design of AI technologies, we should be prioritizing life-centered design in order to include other living species when we are designing these kinds of systems.
Yeah, we're only thinking of ourselves, but we are not thinking of the animals and wildlife and everything else that contributes so much to our world and our society as well. Well, we're just about closing up now. I'm going to turn it back over to Anitra, but this has been a fascinating discussion, and with every comment and every piece of information, I think, or at least for me, that I've heard today, more and more questions keep popping up. So it's going to be a very long educational journey. But I thank you both for being here today and contributing so much. So Anitra, would you like to take it now?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Willie. Thank you, Hope. Thank you, Irene, for such an insightful conversation. And before I close, I just want to give anyone that might have a question, we have time for 1 or 2 questions before we're at the top of the hour. Let's see, Betsy has a comment. Let me get to it. Oh, she said, Betsy Anderson said, I took 7 pages of notes. Appreciate your time and your insight. So thank you all so much. Does anyone have a question before we close out the final session of 2023 of Diversity in the PR Classroom?
I think it's James Lewis has a hand up.
All right, go ahead, James.
So I guess I think for intentional bias, we have some ways to combat it, right? Because we can think through kind of what the inputs are. But my concern is like the unconscious bias. Like, what do we do if, and like the innocuous thought that I had, or potentially innocuous thought, like if I have a sandwich shop and I'm looking for people to come work at my sandwich shop in New Jersey, part of the state calls sandwiches subs, other part of the state calls it hoagies. And so I say, look, give me subs in my resume search. And I've got the best sandwich maker in the world, but he calls it a hoagie in his resume. He's going to be excised from the potential review. And it's based purely on my unconscious bias based on what part of the state I'm in. And I may not have a way internally to kind of even recognize that my hoagie maker is not in my review pool. And so when I think about that being multiplied out over time, just based on the linguistics that I'm comfortable with, it can definitely have a detrimental, because I could potentially never have a South Jerseyan in my organization based on that bias. And it's not something I'm doing intentionally. And so I think when that unconscious bias intersects with AI, we're going to have a lot more difficulty unraveling it. And we may not even realize it until the back end. It's like, I've never got an application from a South Jersey resident that's gotten past the resume section. And so when that's coupled too with like intentional biases, right? Because we may think, well, those folks may just not be interested in sandwiches, right? That it can become almost a compounding effect. So I'm curious, what, if any, thought we need to give to like the pre-beginning in some ways, right? Because it's unraveling the unconscious bias of the decision makers before there's dimensions put around the AI component of it that I think, is giving me some hesitation is like the soft word for it, but definitely gives me the scaries, I think.
Yeah, I could jump on that one. There actually are some pretty amazing companies already, and I kind of hinted at them a little bit. There's one called Fiddler AI and Parity. These companies that look at the output and have fairness metrics and demographic metrics and equal opportunity metrics, and they can show. I'm not smart enough to figure out how they do it, but they can see the bias, kind of the effects of the unintentional bias, I guess. Well, hopefully it's unintentional, but they can kind of see that and spot that and call that out. I don't know how we figure out how to fix our unintentional biases, but yeah, there are companies out there already who look at the output and can figure out kind of the deviations that maybe shouldn't be there, or what sits out that's weird, and catch some of that stuff. So it's a real thing that people are already kind of struggling with.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, James, for a great question. And thank you all for being here. Thank you again, Hope, Irene, Willie, for a great session, and to our sponsor, Stan Richards School of Advertising and Public Relations at the University of Texas at Austin. Please join us again in Q1 of 2024 for our next episode of DPRC. I would like to close this by wishing you all happy Indigenous Peoples Month, happy holidays, and please stay safe and stay well. We'll see you again in 2024. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Okay, bye.